Dr. Zephyr Cole's second set of eyes twitched as the emergency beacon pierced through the routine hum of the medical bay. Another day, another disaster in the Outer Rim territories. She flexed her forearms in sequence, a habit that usually calmed her nerves, but today something felt different about this distress call. "Doctor, we have a Code 7 emergency beacon from Sector 42, announced Lieutenant Vaughn, his tentacles dancing across the communication console with practiced efficiency. "Derelict freighter. Unknown registry. Single life sign detected." Single life sign. Zephyr's voice carried the weight of someone who had seen too many rescue missions go wrong. "What species?" "Unknown, Doctor. The bioscanner is giving us unusual readings." The Mercy's Edge adjusted course with the smooth precision that only a hospital ship could manage. Within 2 standard hours they had the derelict freighter in their cargo bay. The ship looked like it had been through a meat grinder, then shot out of a cannon, then probably insulted someone's mother for good measure. Zephyr led the medical team through the airlock, a portable scanner already beeping frantically. The freighter's corridor was a maze of improvised repairs, jury-rigged life support systems, and what appeared to be duct tape holding critical components together. Whoever had been flying this thing had either been incredibly resourceful or completely insane, possibly both. "Life sign is this way," Vaughn reported, his scanner pointing toward what used to be the ship's medical bay. They found him lying on a makeshift surgical table, constructed from cargo containers and padded with what looked like seat cushions. The survivor was a bipedal species she had never encountered, with pale skin marked by an intricate network of scars that seemed to form patterns. His bone structure showed impossible density readings, and when her scanner passed over his blood, it emitted a faint, ethereal glow. "Well," Zephyr muttered, her sarcasm coating every word like honey on poison, "this should be interesting." Chief Medical Officer Quilnax arrived at the medical bay with all the enthusiasm of someone attending their own autopsy. His scaled hide rippled with nervous energy as he reviewed the initial scans, his triple-jointed neck craning at impossible angles to study the readouts. "Dr. Cole, these readings cannot be accurate," Quilnax announced with the confidence of someone who had never been wrong about anything medical in his entire career. "The bone density measurements suggest this creature's skeleton should weigh more than our surgical table." Nurse practitioner Vaughn was having his own crisis of confidence. The Kethurian's usual steady demeanor had cracked as he attempted to run standard diagnostics on their mysterious patient. "Doctor, the cellular regeneration scanner is showing healing patterns that violate basic biological principles. Look at this scar tissue." Zephyr examined the readings with growing irritation. The scars formed intricate patterns across the survivor's torso, arms and legs. Some appeared fresh, others looked decades old, but all of them showed evidence of healing in ways that should have been impossible without advanced medical intervention. "These wounds," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of professional skepticism that could corrode durasteel, "appear to be from weapons that do not exist in any database. Energy burns that suggest plasma weapons with power outputs that would liquefy most known species. Kinetic trauma patterns, indicating projectile velocities that should have turned him into biological soup." The medical scanner emitted a series of frustrated beeps, then displayed an error message that roughly translated to "I give up, figure it out yourself." "Outstanding," Zephyr commented dryly. "Our state-of-the-art medical equipment, worth more than most planetary defense budgets, has been defeated by one unconscious alien with a mysterious glowing blood condition." Quilnax attempted to recalibrate the diagnostic array while Vaughn tried a different approach with the cellular analysis unit. Both instruments promptly malfunctioned in spectacular fashion, displaying readings that suggested their patient was simultaneously dead, alive, decomposing, regenerating, and possibly achieving enlightenment. "Doctor," Vaughn reported with the strained patience of someone watching their professional credibility evaporate in real time, "the blood analysis indicates the presence of compounds that should not exist in any known carbon-based life form. The cellular structure appears to be reinforced with materials that our computers classify as impossible." The medical bay had become a symphony of malfunctioning equipment, each instrument contributing its own unique pattern of error messages and alarm signals. The backup diagnostic systems fared no better, apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor and simply refusing to provide any readings at all. Well, Zephyr observed with the kind of calm that preceded either breakthrough discoveries or complete mental breakdowns. At least we know he is definitely not from any species in our medical databases. That narrows it down to only about 90% of the galaxy. The routine data backup should have been the most boring part of Dr. Cole's shift. Medical records, diagnostic reports, and treatment protocols were automatically transmitted to the central archives every 6 hours. It was the kind of background process that happened so regularly that most crew members forgot it existed, which made it particularly surprising when the ancient Keeper archive system suddenly decided to wake up from its 800-cycle nap. The archive was a relic from the First Galactic War, a massive database that contained military records, threat assessments, and classified information from conflicts that most modern species had never heard of. It occupied an entire section of the ship's data core, protected by security protocols that were older than some civilizations. Dr. Cole was reviewing the survivors' latest scan results when her terminal began displaying warning messages in languages that predated the current galactic standard. The text scrolled past in rapid succession, accompanied by audio alerts that sounded like someone had taught a dying whale how to speak in binary. "Computer, what is the nature of these alerts?" she inquired with the weary patience of someone who had dealt with too many technical malfunctions in one shift. "Archive system activation detected. Biological scan data has triggered priority classification protocols. Commander Marley has been automatically notified." Commander Marley? Zephyr's confusion was genuine. Marley was the ship's security chief, not medical personnel. Why would security be involved in a medical case? Before the computer could respond, the medical bay doors slid open with the authoritative hiss that announced the arrival of someone important. Commander Tom Marley entered with the purposeful stride of a career military officer who had seen enough action to develop a healthy respect for the unexpected. "Dr. Cole, I need you to explain to me why our weapons archive just classified your patient as an extinct species with a combat priority alpha designation." Marley was a Zentauran, built like a brick wall with anger management issues and a security clearance. His 4 arms were crossed in a pattern that suggested either deep thought or preparation for violence, and his expression indicated he was not particularly happy about being summoned to the medical bay by a computer system that was older than his grandmother. "Combat priority alpha." Zephyr repeated the phrase with the kind of careful pronunciation reserved for words that might explode. "Commander, I am not familiar with that classification." Marley's expression grew grimmer as he accessed his command terminal. According to the archive, combat priority alpha is reserved for species that represent an existential threat to galactic civilization. The last species to receive that designation was the Vorthan Collective, and we fought a 50-year war to contain them. The archive system continued to broadcast warnings, each message accompanied by holographic displays showing biological data, threat assessments, and what appeared to be combat footage from battles that had taken place centuries ago. The images showed bipedal figures fighting with a determination that bordered on insanity, continuing to engage enemy forces despite injuries that should have been immediately fatal. "Species designation," the archive announced in a voice that carried the weight of authority from a bygone era. "Human. Status. Extinct for 847 standard cycles. Threat assessment. Maximum. Recommendation. Extreme caution advised when engaging specimens. Note: previous containment efforts resulted in 37% casualties among Galactic Union forces. Commander Marley and Dr. Carl stared at each other with the shared expression of people who had just discovered that their routine day was about to become significantly more complicated. "Doctor," Marley said with the calm that preceded either brilliant strategic decisions or spectacular disasters, "I think we need to have a longer conversation about your patient." The briefing room had never felt smaller. Commander Marley sat across from Dr. Cole, both of them staring at the holographic display that the Keeper archive had graciously decided to share with them. The images flickered with the grainy quality of ancient recordings, but the content was clear enough to make both officers question their career choices. "Playback begins." the archive announced with the cheerful demeanor of a computer system that had been waiting 8 centuries to show off its most terrifying home movies. Vorthan Crusades, Year 12. Battle of Kepler Station. The hologram showed a space station under siege. Vorthan warships, each the size of a small moon, bombarded the structure with enough firepower to glass a planet. The station's defenses had been overwhelmed hours ago. Its hull breached in dozens of places, atmosphere venting into space like blood from a wound. Any reasonable species would have evacuated. Any sane species would have surrendered. Humans apparently had decided to redecorate the station with Vorthan body parts. Note the tactical approach. The archive continued with academic enthusiasm. Human forces continue combat operations despite catastrophic structural damage to their base of operations. Observe subject designation, Marcus Chen, human military personnel. The hologram zoomed in on a figure in a badly damaged pressure suit, missing his left arm and half his helmet. He was using a piece of broken bulkhead as a club to beat a Vorthan warrior to death while his suit leaked atmosphere in a steady stream. That, Dr. Cull observed with professional detachment, should not be possible. Blood loss, oxygen deprivation and trauma shock should have rendered him unconscious within minutes. Combat duration for Subject Chen, 4 hours, 17 minutes. Confirmed eliminations, 23 Vorthan personnel. Cause of termination, ammunition exhaustion, not injury. Marley leaned forward, his military mind trying to process what he was seeing. Archive. Display casualty statistics for human forces during the Crusades. Numbers began scrolling across the display with the relentless efficiency of a bureaucratic nightmare. Human military casualties showed fatality rates that defied medical understanding. Soldiers continued fighting with injuries that should have killed them instantly. Entire units refused to retreat despite being outnumbered 50-1. Standard Vorthan containment protocol, the archive explained, required 5-1 numerical superiority to ensure mission success against human forces. This ratio was later revised to 15-1 following the Rigel incident. The Rigel incident? Dr. Cole inquired with the morbid curiosity of someone watching a shuttle crash in slow motion. The hologram shifted to show a planet-side battle. A single human settlement, population approximately 3,000, had been surrounded by an entire Vorthan battle fleet. The siege lasted 18 months. When Vorthan forces finally breached the settlement's defenses, they found that the humans had been using their own wounded as mobile weapons platforms, strapping explosives to anyone too injured to walk, and sending them into enemy formations. Psychological warfare assessment. The archive noted with clinical precision. Vorthan forces developed what human medics termed battle fatigue at rates 17 times higher than baseline. Many Vorthan commanders requested reassignment rather than continue engagement with human populations. Marley's forearms crossed in sequence, a gesture that indicated either deep thought or preparation for violence. Archive, what was the final assessment of human military capability? Human forces were classified as an extinction-level threat to galactic civilization. The archive replied with the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing the weather, not due to technological superiority or numerical advantage, but due to their fundamental inability to recognize when they had been defeated. Standard military doctrine proved ineffective against an enemy that refused to acknowledge the concept of surrender. The final holographic image showed the aftermath of the last major human battle. A field of Vorthan and human dead stretched to the horizon, but the ratio was grotesquely skewed. For every human casualty, there were dozens of Vorthan bodies. Threat elimination was achieved through systematic destruction of human breeding populations. The archive concluded with bureaucratic efficiency. Total human extinction confirmed 847 cycles ago. Classification. Resolved. Dr. Cole stared at the display with the expression of someone who had just realized that her patient represented something far more dangerous than a medical curiosity. "Commander," she said with the careful precision of someone choosing their words to avoid accidentally starting a war, "I believe our assessment of Mr. Torres may require significant revision." The first sign that their patient had regained consciousness was the sound of someone trying to sit up despite having 17 different types of medical restraints holding him to the surgical table. Cole rushed into the medical bay to find Brandon Torres attempting to swing his legs over the side of the bed with all the casual determination of someone getting up to make breakfast. "Excuse me," she said with the kind of professional authority that usually stopped patients from doing stupid things. "You cannot get up. You have sustained massive trauma to your cardiovascular system, skeletal structure, and nervous system." Brandon looked at her with the polite confusion of someone who had been told that water was wet. "Oh, hey there. Thanks for patching me up. I am feeling much better now." He flexed his shoulders experimentally, causing several monitoring devices to emit alarmed beeping sounds. "You guys did great work. I barely feel the broken ribs anymore." "You have 14 broken ribs," Dr. Cole replied with the patience of someone explaining physics to a rock. 3 punctured organs, severe blood loss, and what appears to be radiation poisoning. "Yeah, that sounds about right," Brandon agreed cheerfully. "Listen, I hate to be a bother, but do you folks have any coffee? I know it is kind of a weird request, but I have not had a decent cup in about 6 months. Dr. Cole blinked all 4 of her eyes, in sequence, a response usually reserved for encounters with cosmic-level stupidity. "Coffee? I am not familiar with that substance. Also, you mentioned 6 months. 6 months. Of what? Oh, right. Alien medical ship. Forgot about that for a second." Brandon grinned with the kind of easy humor that suggested near-death experiences were a minor inconvenience. "Coffee is a human beverage made from ground plant beans. Helps you wake up in the morning. As for the 6 months, that is about how long I have been drifting in space after my ship's life support decided to take an extended vacation." The medical scanner beside Brandon's bed chose that moment to emit a sound that could best be described as electronic screaming. Dr. Carl glanced at the readouts and felt her professional composure crack like an eggshell. "Mr. Torres," she said, with the careful pronunciation of someone handling unstable explosives, "our scans indicate that you have been surviving in hard vacuum conditions, with minimal life support for approximately 200 standard days. That should be impossible." 200 days? Brandon considered this with the thoughtful expression of someone calculating a tip. Felt longer. Time really drags when you are stuck in a tin can with nothing but emergency rations and recycled air. Though I have to admit, the view was spectacular. "You guys should check out the Horsehead Nebula sometime. Really puts things in perspective." Nurse Vaughn entered the medical bay carrying a tray of diagnostic equipment, took one look at the conscious patient and promptly dropped everything. The crash of medical instruments hitting the deck provided a metallic percussion accompaniment to Brandon's continued attempts to sit up. "The life support readings from your ship," Dr. Cole continued with growing bewilderment, "indicate that you should have died from oxygen deprivation within the first week. The radiation exposure alone should have been fatal within days." "Yeah, radiation was pretty rough," Brandon admitted, rubbing the back of his neck with the casual gesture of someone discussing a minor headache. "Had to jury-rig some shielding from cargo containers and hope for the best. Lost about 20 pounds and my hair fell out. But I figured that was temporary. Hair is already growing back, see?" He turned his head to show Dr. Cole what appeared to be perfectly normal hair growth, despite the fact that he should have been a desiccated corpse floating in the void. "Mr. Torres," she said with the kind of calm that preceded either medical breakthroughs or complete mental breakdowns, "I think we need to run some additional tests." Commander Marley entered the medical bay with the purposeful stride of someone who had spent the last hour reviewing military files that challenged his understanding of galactic warfare. He carried a data pad loaded with questions and a growing suspicion that their rescued patient represented something far more significant than a routine medical emergency. Brandon was sitting on the edge of the medical bed, swinging his legs like a child waiting for recess. The sight of a supposedly critically injured patient displaying such casual mobility caused Marley's left eye to twitch, a nervous habit he had developed during his service in the Outer Rim conflicts. "Mr. Torres," Marley began with the formal courtesy that preceded official interrogations, "I am Commander Tom Marley, Chief Security Officer aboard this vessel. I need to ask you some questions about your origins and current situation. Sure thing, Commander, Brandon replied with the easy familiarity of someone chatting with a neighbor. Though I have to warn you, my story is kind of weird. Also, do you guys have anything to eat besides that nutrient paste stuff? I tried some earlier, and it tastes like cardboard mixed with regret. Marley consulted his datapad with the efficiency of a career military officer. According to our records, humans were declared extinct 847 years ago. How do you account for your existence? Oh, that. Brandon scratched his chin thoughtfully. Yeah, we heard about that. Big misunderstanding, really. See, when the Vorthan Collective started their whole Exterminate the Humans campaign, a bunch of our colonies figured it might be a good time to take an extended vacation. We found this really nice nebula out in the Perseus Arm and decided to lay low for a while. You have been hiding in a nebula for 8 centuries? Marley's professional skepticism was evident in his tone. Well, not me personally, Brandon clarified with a grin. I am only 37. But yeah, the colonies have been playing hide and seek with the rest of the galaxy for about 800 years. Turns out nebulae are great for blocking sensor scans, and most folks do not like flying through ionized gas clouds anyway. Dr. Cole, who had been monitoring the conversation while pretending to review medical charts, looked up with professional curiosity. Mr. Torres, how many human survivors are there? Oh, rough estimate? Brandon considered the question with the casual air of someone discussing the weather. Maybe 13,000 spread across about 40 colonies. We have been keeping pretty busy. Turns out 8 centuries gives you time to work on a lot of projects. Marley felt his other eye begin to twitch. 40 colonies, 13,000 survivors. Mr. Torres, do you understand the implications of what you are telling me? That we are probably going to need to update some paperwork, Brandon suggested helpfully. I know being declared extinct is probably a bureaucratic nightmare to reverse. We can provide documentation if that helps. The casual way Brandon discussed the survival of an allegedly extinct species was beginning to affect Marley's professional composure. He had dealt with everything from pirate raids to diplomatic crises, but nothing had prepared him for interviewing someone who treated galactic-scale deception as a minor clerical error. Mr. Torres, Marley continued with strained patience, the archive records indicate that humans were considered the most dangerous species in galactic history. Combat Priority Alpha designation. How do you respond to that assessment? Dangerous? Brandon looked genuinely surprised. Commander, we are just trying to get by. We grow food, build stuff, raise families. Pretty standard colony life. I mean, yeah, if someone tries to wipe us out, we are going to fight back, but that seems pretty reasonable to me. Dr. Cole interjected with clinical precision. Mr. Torres, you survived 6 months in space with minimal life support. You are sitting up and having a conversation despite injuries that should have left you comatose. You appear to consider near-death experiences as minor inconveniences. Do you not see how this might be concerning to other species? Brandon considered this with the thoughtful expression of someone encountering a new concept. I guess when you put it like that, it does sound kind of weird. But honestly, most of the stuff that worries other folks does not seem that bad to us. Space is big and dangerous, sure, but so is camping. You just pack appropriate supplies and keep your eyes open. Camping, Marley repeated slowly, is not typically compared to surviving in hard vacuum. Different scale, same basic principles, Brandon replied cheerfully. Shelter, water, food, heat source. The main difference is that space camping has better views and fewer bugs. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Nurse Vaughn carrying a tray of what appeared to be actual food, rather than nutrient paste. Brandon's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of someone who had been living on emergency rations for months. Oh, fantastic. Real food. He examined the tray with genuine appreciation. Is that some kind of protein? And vegetables? You guys are amazing. Marley watched their supposedly dangerous patient express childlike delight over a basic meal and began to understand why humans had been so feared. It was not malice or aggression that made them terrifying. It was their absolute refusal to acknowledge when they were supposed to give up. combined with the kind of cheerful optimism that could survive anything the universe threw at them. "Mr. Torres," Marley said, with the weary resignation of someone whose worldview had just been fundamentally altered, "I think we are going to need a much longer conversation." The communication from Galactic Defense Fleet Command arrived with all the subtlety of a plasma torpedo to the face. Admiral Drahorn's holographic image materialized in the medical bay with the kind of authoritative presence that made junior officers check their uniform regulations and senior officers review their insurance policies. "Commander Marley," Drahorn announced, "without preamble, you will transfer the human specimen to Research Station Omega-7 immediately. This matter now falls under Defense Fleet jurisdiction." Admiral Drahorn was a Krillian, built like a battleship with anger management issues, and the kind of military bearing that suggested she had personally strangled enemy combatants with her bare hands. Her scaled hide bore the ritual scars of someone who had earned her rank through combat rather than politics, and her four eyes tracked movement with predatory precision. Commander Marley straightened to attention, though his expression suggested he was already formulating objections. "Admiral, with respect, Mr. Torres is a medical patient under the care of our civilian medical staff. He has not committed any crimes and poses no immediate threat." "No immediate threat?" Drahorn's laugh carried the warmth of liquid nitrogen. "Commander, this creature represents the survival of a species that required the combined military might of 17 galactic civilizations to contain. Every moment he remains uncontrolled represents a potential threat to galactic security." Dr. Cole observed the exchange with the professional detachment of someone watching a shuttle crash in slow motion. "Admiral, if I may interject, Mr. Torres has been entirely cooperative with our medical procedures. He seems more interested in complaining about our food quality than plotting galactic conquest." "Doctor, your medical opinion is noted and dismissed," Drahorn replied with the casual efficiency of someone crushing an insect. "Human durability and resilience represent strategic assets that must be studied and, if possible, replicated for military applications. The Defense Fleet requires a complete biological analysis." Brandon, who had been quietly eating what appeared to be some kind of alien fruit salad, looked up with mild interest. "Excuse me, Admiral, but when you say studied, are we talking about the fun kind of studying or the kind that involves a lot of uncomfortable poking and prodding?" Drahorn's attention focused on Brandon with the intensity of a targeting laser. "You will be subjected to comprehensive durability assessments to determine the limits of human physical resilience. The data will be used to enhance our military personnel through genetic modification and cybernetic augmentation." "Ah," Brandon nodded with understanding. "The uncomfortable poking kind. Got it." Commander Marley's objections were overruled with the kind of bureaucratic efficiency that made democracy look like a pleasant suggestion. Within 2 hours, Brandon was transferred to a military transport bound for Research Station Omega-7, accompanied by Dr. Cullard volunteered to monitor his medical condition during transit. "Doctor," Marley said as they watched the transport disappear into hyperspace, "I have a very bad feeling about this entire situation." Dr. Cole's expression carried the sardonic amusement of someone who had given up on the universe making sense. "Commander, what could possibly go wrong with subjecting a member of an allegedly extinct warrior species to military experimentation? I am sure Admiral Drahorn has considered all possible consequences of antagonizing someone whose ancestors fought the entire galaxy to a standstill. Research Station Omega-7 existed for the sole purpose of conducting experiments that were too dangerous, too classified or too morally questionable to be performed anywhere civilized beings might accidentally discover them. Lead scientist Moran ran the facility with the efficiency of someone who had long ago decided that ethics were merely suggestions and consent was optional. Brandon was escorted to Laboratory Suite 12, a sterile white chamber, equipped with enough monitoring equipment to analyze the molecular structure of thoughts. The restraint table in the center of the room looked disturbingly well used, and the various instruments arranged on nearby tables suggested that Moran's definition of scientific study was somewhat broader than generally accepted academic standards. "Subject Human 001, Moran announced to his recording devices with scientific enthusiasm, Initial durability assessment will begin with baseline stress testing. Morin was a Vitherian, a species known for their analytical minds and complete lack of empathy. His 6 arms allowed him to operate multiple instruments simultaneously, while his compound eyes could track dozens of data streams at once. He approached scientific inquiry with the kind of methodical dedication usually reserved for religious fanatics or serial killers. "So," Brandon said conversationally as restraints locked around his wrists and ankles, "this is a nice facility you have here. Very clean. Do you folks get hazard pay for working on a station that probably violates about 17 different galactic ethics agreements?" Morin ignored the question and activated the first test sequence. Electrical current flooded through Brandon's nervous system at levels designed to render most subjects unconscious within seconds. Brandon winced slightly and continued talking. "Wow, that has some kick to it. Reminds me of the time I accidentally grabbed a live power coupling while fixing our colony's generator. My wife laughed at me for a week after that." He turned his head to address one of the research assistants. "Are you married, kid? This job must make family dinners interesting." The research assistant, a nervous Altarian named Vex, nearly dropped his datapad. Most test subjects were screaming or unconscious by this point. Brandon was making small talk and asking about his personal life. Morin increased the electrical output to levels that should have stopped Brandon's heart. Brandon's only response was to ask if anyone had thought to pack snacks for what was obviously going to be a long day. "Fascinating," Morin muttered, adjusting his instruments. "Subject maintains full consciousness and conversational capacity during electrical trauma that would incapacitate a Krillian battle trooper." The next test involved pressure application. Brandon was subjected to gravitational forces that should have crushed his skeletal structure into powder. He used the opportunity to comment on the quality of the laboratory's ceiling tiles and ask whether the station had a decent cafeteria. "You know," Brandon observed as Morin prepared the thermal stress apparatus, "I appreciate you guys being thorough, but this is starting to feel less like scientific research and more like that time my drill sergeant decided to test whether humans could survive enhanced interrogation techniques. Spoiler alert, we could." Hours passed. Brandon endured temperature extremes that would have liquefied most organic compounds, radiation exposure that should have turned him into a glowing puddle, and chemical agents that were designed to shut down biological functions at the cellular level. Through it all, he maintained a steady stream of cheerful conversation, asking about the researchers' families, commenting on their equipment, and offering suggestions for improving their experimental methodology. "Dr. Morin," research assistant Vex whispered during a brief pause in the testing, "the subject's vital signs are completely stable. It is as if these procedures are having no effect whatsoever." "Impossible," Morin replied, though his confidence was beginning to crack. "Increase the intensity on all parameters. I want to find this creature's breaking point." Brandon, who was currently being subjected to sonic frequencies designed to liquefy internal organs, turned to address Morin directly. "Doc, I have to ask, what exactly is the end game here? Because if you are trying to figure out how much punishment humans can take, I should probably mention that we invented extreme sports for entertainment. This is basically a Tuesday for us." The breaking point came not when Brandon's endurance failed, but when Dr. Morin's sanity began to crack. After 12 hours of continuous testing, the lead researcher was staring at data readouts that suggested his subject was not only unharmed, but appeared to be getting bored with the proceedings. "Perhaps," Brandon suggested helpfully, "we could call it a day. I mean, I appreciate the hospitality, but I was kind of hoping to get home before my wife starts worrying. She tends to get cranky when I am late for dinner." The decision to escape came not from any particular discomfort with the testing procedures, but from a conversation Brandon overheard between Dr. Morin and his research assistants during what they optimistically called a rest period. "The subject's cellular structure appears to be self-repairing at an impossible rate," Morin was explaining with scientific enthusiasm. "We need to harvest tissue samples for cloning experiments. If we can replicate this durability in our own species, we could create an army of virtually indestructible soldiers." "Harvest samples?" Research Assistant Vex inquired with the kind of clinical curiosity that preceded morally questionable decisions. Full vivisection, Moran replied matter-of-factly. We will keep the subject conscious during the procedure to observe pain response patterns. The knowledge gained will be invaluable for military applications. Brandon, who had been pretending to sleep while actually studying the laboratory's security systems, decided that his hosts had officially overstayed their welcome. The transition from uncomfortable scientific inquiry to "let us cut you apart while you are still breathing" crossed a line that even his generally accommodating nature could not ignore. The first step was freeing himself from the restraint table, which proved remarkably easy once he stopped pretending that the restraints were actually capable of holding him. The designers had apparently never considered that their test subjects might possess the grip strength to bend durasteel with their bare hands. Brandon stood up, stretched experimentally, and began examining the laboratory equipment with the curious interest of someone window shopping. The security cameras tracked his movement, but the monitoring station was currently unmanned. The research staff had gone to prepare their harvesting equipment, confident that their subject was safely contained. Now then, Brandon murmured to himself, let us see how this place is put together. What followed was not a violent escape but rather a methodical dismantling of Research Station Omega-7's security infrastructure by someone who apparently understood Starship systems better than the people who had designed them. Brandon worked with the casual efficiency of an experienced engineer, bypassing security protocols, rerouting power systems, and disabling containment fields with impromptu tools constructed from laboratory equipment. The genius of his approach was its complete lack of urgency. He worked at the pace of someone performing routine maintenance, pausing occasionally to leave polite notes for the research staff. The first note taped to Dr. Moran's computer terminal read, "Thanks for the comprehensive physical exam. Your equipment is impressive, but I think we have different ideas about doctor-patient relationships." The Torres. The second note, left on the security office door, was more detailed. "I borrowed some supplies for the trip home. I left an IOU with estimated replacement costs. Also, you might want to upgrade your containment systems. The current setup would not hold a determined house cat." By the time the research staff discovered that their subject had somehow transformed from helpless test specimen to uninvited systems engineer, Brandon had already disabled the station's communications array, locked down the transportation bays, and somehow managed to reprogram the food synthesizers to only produce nutrient paste with a distinctly unpleasant flavor. The final note, discovered in the station's central computer core, was typically thoughtful. "Sorry about the inconvenience. I disabled your long-range communications and transportation systems, but everything will reset automatically in about 6 hours. That should give me enough time to get home and explain to my wife why I am 3 weeks late for dinner. Thanks for the medical checkup, and good luck with your research. Might I suggest focusing on less invasive methodologies in the future?" Brandon Torres, former test subject, current uninvited guest. Brandon's departure from Research Station Omega-7 was accomplished with the same methodical efficiency that had characterized his escape. He selected a small research vessel from the station's hangar, something fast and long-range but not particularly valuable. His approach to theft was refreshingly honest. He left a detailed inventory of everything he was haste, along with estimated replacement costs and a promise to return the ship to the nearest Galactic Union facility. Dr. Moran and his research team watched helplessly from the station's command center as their former test subject performed what appeared to be a complete pre-flight inspection of the stolen vessel. Security cameras captured Brandon checking fuel levels, testing communication systems, and even cleaning the viewport before departure. "Should we attempt to stop him?" Research Assistant Vex inquired with the kind of professional curiosity that suggested he had not fully grasped the implications of recent events. Dr. Moran stared at the security feeds with the shell-shocked expression of someone whose understanding of the universe had been fundamentally altered. "With what? Our security systems are offline, our weapons are disabled, and our communications array is broadcasting nothing but recipe suggestions for nutrient-paste casserole." As Brandon's stolen ship cleared the station's docking bay, The research vessel's communication system activated. Brandon's voice filled the command center, with the cheerful tone of someone calling to thank his hosts for a pleasant visit. Research Station Omega-7. This is Brandon Torres, aboard the temporarily borrowed science vessel Inquisitive Minds. I wanted to thank you all for the hospitality and let you know that your ship is in good hands. I will make sure it gets returned to the proper authorities. Dr. Moran activated the response channel with trembling hands. Mr. Torres, you are stealing classified military equipment and violating approximately 47 Galactic statutes. I prefer to think of it as unauthorized borrowing, Brandon replied with amusement. Besides, I left payment estimates and contact information. My colony has an excellent legal department if you want to work out the details later. The communication channel remained open as Brandon began transmitting a message on all Galactic Union emergency frequencies. His voice carried across space with the calm authority of someone making an important public service announcement. Attention Galactic Union Command. This is Brandon Torres, human survivor and recent guest of your Defense Fleet research program. I wanted to thank everyone for the medical assistance and let you know that reports of human extinction have been greatly exaggerated. There are approximately 12,000 of us spread across about 40 colonies in the Perseus Arm. Dr. Cole, monitoring communications from the medical ship Mercy's Edge, felt her professional composure crack as Brandon's transmission continued. We have been keeping a low profile for the last 8 centuries, but recent events suggest that it might be time to reintroduce ourselves to galactic society. We are generally peaceful folks, but we would appreciate it if future scientific inquiries could be conducted with a bit more attention to proper consent protocols. Admiral Dreehorn's response came through the military channels with the fury of someone whose carefully laid plans had just been reduced to cosmic-scale embarrassment. Mr. Torres, you will return to custody immediately or face the consequences. Brandon's reply carried the patient tone of someone explaining basic concepts to a slow child. Admiral, with respect, I think there might be some confusion about our respective bargaining positions. You see, those 12,000 humans I mentioned, they have spent 8 centuries preparing for the possibility that someone might try to hunt us again. We have gotten quite good at it. The final transmission came as Brandon's ship prepared to jump to hyperspace. Oh, and Admiral Dreehorn, you might want to reconsider any plans involving forced experimentation on human subjects. We tend to take that kind of thing personally. Have a nice day, everyone. Dr. Cole watched the stolen research vessel disappear into hyperspace and allowed herself a moment of sardonic appreciation for the cosmic joke that had just unfolded. Commander Marley, she transmitted to the security chief. I believe our assessment of the situation may require further revision. How so, Doctor? We have just discovered that humanity is not extinct. They have spent 8 centuries preparing for war, and we have managed to antagonize them within a week of first contact. She paused to consider the implications. I suspect the galaxy just became a significantly more interesting place. 6 months after Brandon Torres disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Dreehorn received a report that would fundamentally alter her understanding of galactic power dynamics. Her flagship, the Inexorable, was conducting a routine patrol of the Outer Rim trade routes when they encountered something unprecedented, pirates fleeing from their own raids. Admiral, Commander Kex reported with barely concealed bewilderment, we are receiving distress calls from the Bloody Fang pirate consortium. They claim they are being systematically hunted by unknown forces. Dreehorn reviewed the tactical data with growing confusion. The Bloody Fang had been terrorizing commercial shipping for decades, but something had apparently decided to return the favor. Entire pirate fleets were being disabled, and their crews delivered to Galactic Union authorities with polite efficiency. The first clue came from a rescued merchant captain whose cargo vessel had been saved from pirate attack by mysterious benefactors. They came out of nowhere, the Zalarian trader explained with obvious gratitude. Small ships, human design, but they moved like they had been fighting pirates for centuries. Disabled the entire raider fleet without firing a single lethal shot. The second clue was discovered floating near a disabled pirate base. A message drone containing a simple text transmission. Thanks for the medical checkup. The galaxy seems like a nice place, so we figured we would help keep it that way. The neighborhood watch. Admiral Drahorn stared at the message with the growing realization that her plans to weaponize human durability had produced unintended consequences. Instead of creating an army under Defense Fleet control, she had apparently awakened a species that viewed pirate suppression as a recreational activity. The final piece of the puzzle came from Intelligence Command. Long-range sensors had detected human ships operating throughout the Outer Rim, conducting what appeared to be systematic anti-piracy operations, with efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. Trade route safety had improved by 400% in sectors where human ships had been spotted. Admiral, her intelligence officer reported with professional detachment, it appears that humanity has decided to make themselves useful to galactic civilization. Pirate activity has dropped to historically low levels in 17 sectors. Commercial shipping reports are universally positive regarding their mysterious protectors. Admiral Drahorn contemplated the cosmic irony of her situation. In attempting to control and weaponize humanity, she had instead convinced them to become the galaxy's unofficial peacekeeping force. The species that had once been considered an extinction-level threat had transformed themselves into benevolent guardians, and they had done it with the same cheerful efficiency that Brandon Torres had displayed during his escape. Intelligence, she ordered with the weary resignation of someone whose career had just taken an unexpected turn. Prepare a comprehensive report on human capabilities and recommend appropriate diplomatic protocols. It appears we may have found either the galaxy's most valuable allies or its most dangerous enemies. Which do you believe them to be, Admiral? Drahorn considered the question with the philosophical depth of someone whose understanding of warfare had been fundamentally challenged. I suspect that depends entirely on whether we are intelligent enough to treat them as friends, rather than test subjects. The galaxy had indeed become a more interesting place, and Admiral Drahorn was beginning to suspect that humanity's greatest weapon was not their refusal to die, but their apparently inexhaustible capacity for turning former enemies into grateful allies, through the simple expedient of being genuinely helpful neighbors. Some species conquered through force. Others achieved dominance through technology or economics. Humans apparently planned to take over the galaxy by making everyone like them. It was, Drahorn reflected, probably the most terrifyingly effective strategy she had ever encountered.